Okay, so folks, this is my new video series. I call it Proving God Through Rhetorical Analysis. I've discovered that most arguments against God aren't logical arguments or in the logos, but most of the arguments attack the credibility, the ethos of the Bible. So let's first establish credibility. I'm here to prove that the books of the Bible have not changed since their creation. Now, I want to be clear here. When I say that they have not been altered, I'm referring to the language. I'm not referring to the language or the different interpretations. I'm referring to the information in the words. So a great example would be, there's a verse that says, Jesus wept, okay? If you transfer that to every language, it'll give somebody the image that Jesus is crying. That's all it is. Now, to the degree of which he's crying, whether he's on his knees or whether he's standing up or whether he's on the floor, that's all up for interpretation. I'm not here to tell you that that's different. But what I'm saying is that a Roman reading this scriptures in, 300 AD, is going to come out with the same image as me reading it today. And you can tell that by artwork. And I'm not going to prove that. And right now we're just going to focus on the Bible, proving that the Bible has not been altered. Okay. I'm tired of people using this argument as an excuse not to read the Bible. People will often say, well, the Bible hasn't been altered. Well, hasn't the Bible been changed by all the rich people? For all we know, Jesus just gave us a cookbook and he was like, here's how to cook really good food. But then the religious leaders took it all and was like, oh, now he's God, and it's like, okay, that's a really, really big conspiracy. Let's just focus on the current canon of the Bible. So the current canon of the Bible has 66 books in it. That's a lot for a first video. I'll focus on the New Testament. So let's just I want to focus on the Old Testament. So how do we know the Bible hasn't been changed? The short answer is that we found texts that were buried in ancient times and weren't uncovered until 1946. These are called the Dead Sea Scrolls. And here are their contents. But first, let me give you some background to how the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. The Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered by Muslim Bedouins in 1946. I can tell you what a Bedouin is, but basically they were Muslims, okay? The story goes that some men were hunting caves looking for gold. I'll put their names on the screen for you to save myself from poor pronunciation. Yeah, there they are. Oh gosh, yeah, I couldn't pronounce that. Look at that one. That one has 5 consonants next to each other. Oh my gosh. Yeah, good luck pronouncing that. One of them threw a rock in a dark cave and heard a pop break. Jackpot, they thought. But when they went into the cave, they found old pieces of parchment from the ancient era. Not only was this cave filled with these parchments, but also some of the other surrounding caves, 14 caves, were filled with scriptures, untouched by the elites wishing to rule over us through religious dogma. So we can safely assume that these have not been altered. So let's see if they match up with today's English Old Testament. See if the Dead Sea Scrolls do that. So, okay, I'm going to read each one of them for you in the 14 different caves. So let's start with cave 1. Cave number 1, there was 52 documents. 52 documents. And here they are. Okay. First document was called the Great Scroll of Isaiah. In it is Isaiah chapter 1, verses 1 through 31, chapter 2, verses 1 through 22, chapter 3, verses 1 through 5, chapter 30, chapter 60, chapter 6, chapter 8, 1 through 23, parts of chapter 9, parts of chapter 10, parts of 11, and parts of 46. This cave was dated between 356 and 150 BCE. Okay, so so around there. So they found most of Isaiah, not all of it. The next piece of scripture that was found, or the document that was found, was another copy of Isaiah. This time, just the entire copy, just the entire book. The entire book of Isaiah was found. And it matches to today. When I say these scriptures, they're not similar to today. They are exactly the same as today. Same scriptures, just written in Hebrew. Oh, look, they're written in Hebrew. Oh, look, and there's from 350 BC and 100 BC. Oh, this is really good. So they have an entire book of Isaiah. So Isaiah, boom. That has not been changed for 2,000 years. Great. Great. So, I don't know. That's 1. Great. 2 down, 50 to go. The next piece of document was found was Habakkuk, chapters 1 and 2. Next was Genesis, chapter 12, 18 through 15. Then Genesis again, 1 through 3, chapter 22, and then chapter 23, chapter 24. Exodus, chapter 16, chapter 19, chapter 20, chapter 20, chapter 21, chapter 21, and chapter 21 again. Okay, 2 copies of chapter 21. Okay, then Leviticus, chapter 11, 10 through 11. Parts of chapter 19, parts of chapter 20, parts of chapter 21, parts of chapter 23, and Numbers. Chapter 1, 48 through 50. The next piece of scripture they found was Deuteronomy, chapter 1, 22 through 25, chapter 4, 47 through 49, chapter 8, 18 through 19, chapter 9, verses 27 through 28, chapter 11, chapter 13, chapter 14, chapter 24, chapter 25, chapter 16, 6 through 7. Okay, next they found more Deuteronomy. Oh gosh, there's so much here. This is chapter 1, verses 9 through 13, chapter 8 through 9, chapter 9, verse 10, chapter 11, 30 through 31, chapter 15, 14 through 15, chapter 17, chapter 21, bits of 29, bits of 30, bits of 25, bits of 24 again, bits of all of 28, 31. This is all written in Hebrew. Chapter 32, chapter 33. Great. Next is Judges, chapter 6, verses 20 through 22, chapter 8, verses 1 through unclear, because it looks like some of it is missing. Chapter 9, verses 2 through 6. Chapters 28 through 31. Chapters 40 through 43. All of chapter 48 and all of chapter 49. That's Judges. What else is there here? We did it. And end cut. Now we're jumping to the next one. Samuel. 2 Samuel. 2 Samuel was found. After this was chapter 18. Bits of chapter 18, bits of chapter 20, bits of chapter 21, bits of chapter 23, and then more of Isaiah, which we already proved. I don't need to read all that. There's a lot of reading that's going on right now. Ezekiel, chapter 4, chapter 5. Great. Psalms, Psalm 86, Psalm 92, Psalm 94, Psalm 95, Psalm 96, Psalm 119, Psalm 119, verses 31 through 34, 43 through 48, 77 through 79, Psalm 126, that's verses 6, and then Psalm 127, verses 1 through 5, Psalm 128, verse 3, Psalm 44, 3 through 5, 7, 8, 9, and 23 through 25. Then we found some more Deuteronomy, chapter 5, 23 through 27, 11, and 8 through 11 as well. Let's see here. Next, we find some apocryphal text, meaning texts that just are kind of and like teachings. So we have this guy named Pesher. Pesher is writing a story about Micah, or basically like what do you call those? You call those like a lesson about Micah. He writes like a little lesson about Micah, then a lesson about Zephaniah, and a lesson about Psalms. All written by this guy named Pesher. This is all written in Hebrew, probably some Hebrew Torah guy. Next is the Book of Noah. This is a apocryphal text. It's written in Aramaic. Then we have a Testimony of Levi, also written in Aramaic, apocryphal, written probably in 25 BC. We have the Words of Moses, more apocryphal. Books of Giants again. Another copy of the apocryphal prophecies, more instructions. And this is just, these are Jewish instructions. Books of Mysteries, the Rule of Congregations, the Rule of Blessings, the Rule of Benedictions, the apocryphal of Moses again, the liturgical text, some liturgical text, New Jerusalem text. Then we have some war scrolls. In it, and in this war scroll, which is basically someone quoting on war, we have written Deuteronomy 20, chapter 20, 2 through 5, Numbers 10, chapter 10, and Numbers chapter 24, and then Isaiah again. And then we have Daniel, not all of Isaiah, Isaiah chapter 31, sorry. Then Daniel. Daniel is now also as well. So Daniel chapter 1, verses 10 through 17, and then chapter 2, 2 through 6, and then we have Daniel chapter 3, 22 through 30. Great. That's the end of Cave 1. So now we have Cave 2. Cave Cave 2, don't worry guys, Cave 2 is a little bit better. Cave 2 is 28 documents. In Cave 2, we have Genesis 19, verses 27 through 28, 36, chapter 6, chapter 36, verses 6, and then chapter 35 through 37. Oh gosh. Okay. That's most of Genesis. So we can say Genesis is done. So Isaiah, Genesis. We've done it, guys. Great. Prove it. Those things haven't changed. Next, we have Exodus. Exodus, chapter 1, chapter 7, chapter 9, chapter 11, chapter 12, 32 through 41, chapter 21, chapter 26, chapter 23, chapter 32. Exodus again, chapter 4, chapter 12, chapter 18, chapter 21, chapter 15 through 19, chapter 27, verses 17 through 19, chapter 31, verses 16 through 17, chapter 19 again, chapter 34. Gosh, dang it. And then another piece of Exodus was just a little snippet of chapter 5, 3 through 5. Then we have Leviticus again, 11 through 11, 22 through 29. And this is most of Exodus, by the way, and most of Leviticus. So we're getting close here with these two. Numbers, chapter 3 through 30, chapter 3, and verse 38 through 41, and then chapter 51, and then verse 41, and then also to chapter 4 to verse 3. And then we have Numbers, 33, chapter 33, 47 through 53. Then we have Numbers again, chapter 7, verse 88. Then we have Numbers again, chapter 18, 8 through 9. Then we have Deuteronomy, chapter 1, 7 through 9. Then we have Deuteronomy again, chapter 17, 12 through 15. Then we have Deuteronomy a third time, chapter 10, 8 through 12. Then we have Jeremiah. Jeremiah gets on the scene, starting with chapter 42, 7 through 11, 14. Chapter 4, and then chapter 14, 43, not chapter 14, verse 14. Man, this is a lot. Okay. Chapter 43, 8 through 11. Chapter 44, 1 through 3. Chapter 12 through 14. Chapter 46, verses 27 through 47. And ends on verse 7. Sorry. Chapter 47 ends on verse 7. So 46, 27 to 47, 7. Okay, 48, 7 is, and then 25, and then 48, Jeremiah 48, 7 is there, and then 48, 25 through 39, and then 43 through 45 as well. Then there's chapter 49, verse 10. Then we have the Psalms again. Psalms 103, 2 through 11, 104, 6 through 11. Then we have Job. Job, one of the oldest books. Job 33 through, chapter 33, 28 through 30. Then we have Ruth. Chapter 2, 13 through 23. Then we have chapter 3, Ruth again, 1 through 8. Chapter 4 of Ruth, 3 and 4. Then we have Ruth again, 3, 13 through 18. Then we have the wisdoms of Sriracha, or maybe Ecclesiastes. It looks like there's some reference to Ecclesiastes in the wisdom of Sriracha. Maybe Sirach. Terrible at pronouncing. Whatever. Yeah, that's chapter 6 through 20 through 31. Unclear, though. Those are not biblical. I mean, the books of Jubilees again. The books of Jubilee again. Apocryphal of Moses. Apocryphal of David. Apocrypha of the prophecies. New Jerusalem. Then we have some judicial texts. We have a book of giants from Enoch. And then we have some identified texts. So just some texts that we just couldn't decipher anything on there because they were too damaged by the light and how they were handled. Okay, that's Cave 2. That ends Cave 2. Now we're on Cave 3. Okay, here we go again. Ezekiel 16, 31 through 33. Psalms 2, chapter 2, 6 through 7. Lamentations, chapter 1, 10 through 12. Chapter 3, 53 through 62. Then we have Isaiah verse 1. And this is Pesher on Isaiah. Of course it is. And he quotes Isaiah in it. So then there's an unidentified hymn. There's a testimony of Judah. Then there's unidentified again. Then this is unclassified fragments. Then unidentified fragments. And just kind of like some copper scrolls, copper plaques mentioning buried treasure. I'm not entirely sure where... if it looks like, oh wow, there's mentioning buried treasure. That kind of sounds fun. Anyway, focus. All right, that's the end of Cave 3. Cave 4. Cave 4, Genesis again. I'm not going to read Genesis because we know that Genesis is already solved. Good job, guys. We did it. Exodus. This is the rest of Exodus. Yep, there you go. The Exodus is solved. Genesis, Exodus. So Genesis, Exodus, and Isaiah, all solved. Good job, guys. Hasn't changed. Yep, a lot of Genesis, a lot of copies of Genesis, all in Hebrew, written in different times. These are all fragments of Genesis. Here's one where it's Genesis 40 through 41, Genesis 1, 18 through 27, Genesis 36 through 37, Genesis 40 through 43, Genesis 49, Genesis 48, 1 through 11, Genesis 1 through 11, Genesis 13 through 22, Genesis 2 through 6, Genesis chapter 2 through 6, Genesis 1 through 8, and then verse 10 as well. Genesis 2, 17 through 18. Another copy of Genesis 12. Another copy of Genesis 2. Another copy of Genesis 1. Genesis 41 through 43 chapters again, and 45, chapter 45. All of this found. Genesis, oh my gosh. And then there's even more Genesis, more Exodus. Ah, my gosh. Okay. Rest of Genesis 50. Exodus 1 through 34. Chapters 1 through 34. Genesis 26, verse 21 through 28. This is Exodus again. Chapter 6, chapter 7, 1 through 19, chapter 8, 1, 5. These are bits and pieces of these. These are already done, so we're going to... Okay, Exodus again. Another copy of Exodus. Another copy of Exodus. Another copy of Exodus. Another copy of Exodus. Another. That's 7 copies of Exodus. Now we're in Leviticus. And they found another piece of Leviticus. This is Leviticus. Leviticus 13. Chapter 13, 32 through 33. Chapter 14, 22 through 34. And then 40 and 54. Leviticus chapter 15. Leviticus chapter 16, 15 through 29. Leviticus chapter 27, 5 through 13. Leviticus chapter 35. Leviticus. Another copy of Leviticus. This time it's Leviticus 1 through 11, 1 through 11, and then through 7, and then 17. Then we have chapter 2, 1 through 5. Then we have chapter 3, verse 1. Then we have chapter 8. Then we have chapter 8 through 14. And then we have chapter 21, verse 17 through 20. Then we have chapter 24. Then we have chapter 22, 1 through 33. Then we have chapter 23, 1 through 25. Then we have chapter 40. All of chapter 4, verse 40, sorry, it's not all of chapter 40, it's verse 40. And chapter 24, 2 through 23. Then we have chapter 5, 28 through 29. Then we have chapter 45, verse 45 through 49, and then verse 51 through 52. The next document they found was a copy of Leviticus. Great, that's 3 copies of Leviticus. So in this cave, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 copies of 13 copies of Exodus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 copies of Genesis. So 13 and 14 copies of Exodus and Genesis respectively. And then we're on our 2 copies of, this is our second copy of Leviticus. And there's more coming. So prepare yourself to hear Leviticus a lot. He's gonna say that a lot. Mr. Nimbus all over. Leviticus 1 through chapter 1 through 7. Chapter 3, 16 through 6, verse 4, chapter 6. And then verses 12 through 14, 23 through 28. And then we have, that's chapters. Chapter 12 through 14, and then chapter 23 through 20. I don't think that's chapters, I think that's verses, sorry. Verse 12 through 14, 23 through 28 verses. Chapter 5, 12 through 13. Chapter 8, 26 through 28. Leviticus, the next document is another copy of Leviticus. These are all written in Hebrew, by the way, and all written around the same time as the Herodian era. So this is right after Herod was given control of Judea by the Romans. So this is like Pompey. Pompey invaded Rome, so that's like 40, probably 50 or 60 BC. This is all dated around 60 BC. Another copy of Leviticus, chapter 14, chapter 27, chapter 33 through 36, chapter 15 again, 20 through 24, verses 20 through 24, 17, verses 2 through 11. Leviticus again, chapter 2, 4 through 6, 11 through 18, verses 11 through 18. Leviticus, chapter 3, 2 through 4, 5 through 8, chapter 19, 34 through 37, 20, 1 through 3, 27, 20, 21, chapter 4. Chapter 4. No, I'm sorry. These are 20, verse 21, chapter 4, I see. So, okay, this is what's happening. All right, I'm going to reread this for you. So it's chapter 21, it's chapter 20, 1 through 3, then chapter 20, verse 27 through 21, verse 4. That's what's happening. Then, chapter 21, 9 through 12, chapter 21, 21 through 24, and then chapter 22, 4 through 6, and then 11 through 17. Then we have Leviticus, another copy of Leviticus. This is chapter 7, 19 through 26. All in all, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 copies of Leviticus, all written in Hebrew. One is written in the Hasmonean dynasty. One is written a little bit after the Herodian dynasty in the Hellenistic Rome. I mean, even before. I think Hellenistic Rome was before. It's Pompey stuff. Anyway, so Numbers. Now we have Numbers. Numbers, chapter 11, bits of chapter 12, chapter 11, 31 through chapter 12 through verse 11. Chapter 13, chapter 15, 40 verse 41 through chapter 16, verse 11. 14 and verses, chapter 16, 14 and 16, chapter 17, bits of chapter 18, bits of chapter 19, bits of chapter 20, 21 through 1 through 2, 12 through 13, chapter 22, all of chapter 22, most of chapter 24 except verse 7, I think. Chapter 25, most of it, chapter 29, chapter 30, chapter 32, chapter 33, chapter 34, and 35 through 36. Missing, and then 35 through 36 is missing verses 1 and 2, chapter 35. But yes, that concludes all of Numbers. That's all of Numbers. That's everything. Everything besides a few verses, but I bet you they'll show up here soon. So, boom, Numbers is done. So, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Isaiah. Great, all done. We did it, guys. Deuteronomy, chapter 23, verses 26 through 24. Oh, sorry, 26 through chapter 24, verse 8. I'm sorry, I don't want to discredit Deuteronomy here. Deuteronomy again, chapter 29, 24 through 27, chapter 30, 3 through 14, and then 31, chapter 31, 9 through 17, chapter 24, verse 24, and through 30, and then chapter 32, 1 through 3. Whew, this is a lot, man. I'm going to put a link in the description below if you want to read along with me and try and figure out where I'm at. But anyway, another copy of Deuteronomy. I'm going to pick back up at where I left off in my ramblings. Deuteronomy again. Chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 8, chapter 17, chapter 29, chapter 11, chapter 11, verses 2 through 4, 9 through 13, 18 through 19, chapter 12, 18 through 31. And we have chapter 13, chapter 15, chapter 16, chapter 17, chapter 27, through 20. And then after that, we find another copy of Deuteronomy, chapter 2, 22, 24 through 33, 3 through 14, chapter 3 through 14, through 27, 3:14 through 29, not 27, 29, and then chapter 4, verse 1. Next, we have Deuteronomy again. Oh my gosh, we're still going. This is crazy. And this is written in 150. There's some written in 124, 125. This is all BC. This is all written in BC. Another copy of Deuteronomy. All written in Hebrew, by the way, too. I'm going to constantly say that. Oh my gosh. Chapter 4. Chapter 7, Chapter 9, Chapter 18, Chapter 19, Chapter 20, Chapter 21, Chapter 22, and this video is already 25 minutes. So let's keep, I'm going to keep reading and I'm going to skip over the ones that we've already proven. So if I see Isaiah, Genesis, Deuteronomy, Exodus, or Leviticus again, I'll just skip over it because that's crazy. It's too much, man. We're getting close now. Deuteronomy again, chapter 1, verse 1 through 2 through verse 6. And then we have a bunch of little fragments of chapter 2. And we have chapter 19, chapter 31. Another copy of Deuteronomy, chapter 20, 9 through 13, chapter 21, chapter 22, chapter 23, chapter 24. Okay, this is enough of Deuteronomy. I'm going to paste Deuteronomy on that. It has not changed. Boom, paste it. Here's another copy of Exodus. Next, we have another copy of Exodus mixed with a copy of Deuteronomy. Then we have another copy of Deuteronomy, a third copy of Deuteronomy, another 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 copy of Deuteronomy, and another copy of Deuteronomy, and another copy of Deuteronomy. Great. So all in all, that's like 20 copies of Deuteronomy. Great. Deuteronomy's done. Boom. Placed it. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, and Isaiah. Woo! All 6 of them. Books that haven't changed. Next, we have the next book of the Bible. Let's see. Oh, good, a new one. It's Joshua. Joshua, chapter 8 through 34 through 35. Chapter 5, 2 through 7. Chapter 6, chapter 7, chapter 8, chapter 8, verses 3 through 14. And then chapter 10, 2 through 5, and 8 through 11. Another copy of Joshua, this time having chapter 2, verse 11 through 12, chapter 3, 15 through 16, chapter 4, 1 through 3, chapter 17, 11 through 15. Judges, now we have another copy, another copy of Judges, chapter 6 through, chapter 6, 2 through 6, verse 11 through 13. Judges again, another copy of Judges. Judges 19, verse 5 through 7. Chapter 21, verses 12 through 25. Next, we have an unveiled copy of 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 9, all the way to chapter 2, verse 1, and then chapter 2, verse 1 to verse 10, and then chapter 2, verse 16 through 36. Chapter 3, with most of chapter 3 with some scripture with 4 through 6 missing. Chapter 4, 9, chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 7, 1 through 20, chapter 8, 9 through 20, chapter 9, 6 through 11, and then 16 through 24, chapter 10, chapter 11, chapter 12, chapter 14, 15, 16, 17, and then we have 2 Samuel after it. Starting at chapter 2, 2 Samuel, 5 through 32, verses 5 through 32. Then we have Samuel chapter 4, Samuel chapter 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then 10 verses 18 through 19, chapter 11, 2 through 12, chapter 16 through 20, then chapter 12 of 2 Samuel, 4 through 5, 2 Samuel 8 through 9, 2 Samuel chapter 12, 13 through 20, chapter 12, 30 through 31. Then we have 2 Samuel chapter 13, 2 Samuel chapter 14, 2 Samuel 15, 16. 17 is missing verse 20 and 19. Chapter 21 is 1 through 17, and then 2 Samuel 22, 30 through 51, and then chapter 23, 1 through 6, and then chapter 24, 16 through 20. Okay, that's a lot. Then we have another copy of 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel 16 through 1 through 11, 19, 10 through 17, 20, 27 through 42, 21, 1 through 10, 23, 9 through 17. Another copy of 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel 25 through 30, and chapter 25, 30 through 32. Then we have 2 Samuel 14 again, 7 through 33, 15, 1 through 15. Okay. Then we have 1 Kings. 1 Kings, chapter 7, 31 through 41. Chapter 8, 1 through 9, and then verses 16 through 18. Okay, then we have another copy of Isaiah, which we already know. Fragments of Isaiah again. Another copy of Fragments of Isaiah. More copies of Isaiah. More copies of Isaiah. More copies of Isaiah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 copies of Isaiah after that. And we already know it's already proven, so we're done, not changed. Then we have Jeremiah. Jeremiah is next. 6 through 30. Then we have chapter 7, 1 through 2, 15 through 19, 28 through, and then we have chapter 9, verse 2. Chapter 10, 9 through 14, verse 23 as well. And then chapter 11, 3 through 6, 19 through 20. And then chapter 12, chapter 13, 22 through 23, and 1 through 7. Chapter 14, chapter 15, chapter 17, 8 through 26, chapter 18, 15 through 23, chapter 19, chapter 20, 14 through 18, 21, 1, 22, 3 through 16, and 26, 10. Jeremiah, another copy of Jeremiah. Chapter 9, 22 through 25. Chapter 10, 1 through 21. Jeremiah, again, another copy of Jeremiah. Chapter 4, and then a bunch of verses in chapter 4 that are all over the place, scattered. And then we have chapter 10, chapter 9, chapter 21, chapter 25, chapter 26, chapter 27, chapter 30, and then maybe 33, 16 through 20, unclear. This is written in 200 BC, written in Hebrew as well. More fragments of these are all written in Hebrew. I just want to let you know that. I'm sorry, you're going to hear that a lot. Jeremiah 4, chapter 43, verse 2 through 10. Jeremiah chapter 50, 46 through 4 through 6. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Jeremiah, boom, let's stick a thing on that because that's done. Clearly Jeremiah is done. We're getting close to 1st and 2nd Samuel. I'm almost killing it, but we're not. Jeremiah hasn't changed. Ezekiel chapter 10, 5 through 16, verses 17, chapter 10, 17 through 22, chapter 11, 1 through 11, chapter 23, 14 through 15, chapter 17 through 18, 44 through 47, and then chapter 41, 3 through 6. Ezekiel again, chapter 1, verses 10 through 13, verses 16 through 17, verses 19 through 24. Then Ezekiel again, Ezekiel 24, 2 through 3. Then we have Zechariah chapter 14 and verse 18. Then we have Malachi, chapter 2, 10 through 3, 2. Malachi chapter 2, verse 10 through Malachi chapter 3 through 24. Then we have Jonah, verse 1, all the way to 5. Then we have verses 7, all the way to chapter 2 through 1. And then we have chapter 33, chapter 2. Boom! Jonah's done. That's Jonah. Come on, man. There's nothing really left in Jonah. So boom, Jonah's done. Jonah hasn't changed. Then we have Zephaniah chapter 1 through 2, chapter 2, 13 and 15. Then we have chapter 3, 19 through 20. Then we have Haggai, that's 1, chapter 1, all the way to 2. Then chapter 2, 2 through 4. Then we have Hosea. Oh gosh, another copy of Hosea. Oh gosh. And Hosea, chapter 2, 13 through 15. Chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 7, 12 through 13, chapter 13, 3 through 10, chapter 15, chapter 14, 1 through 6. Then we have Joel chapter 1, 10 through 20. Then we have Joel chapter 2, verse 1, 8 through 23, chapter 4, 6 through 21. Amos chapter 1, verse 1, Amos chapter 2, 11 through 16. Then Amos chapter 3, 1 through 15. Then Amos chapter 4, 1 and 2, verse 1 and 2. Amos chapter 6, 13 through 14. Then we have Amos chapter 7, 1 through 16. Then we have Zephaniah chapter 2, verse 2, verse 15. And then we have Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 1 and 2. Then we have Malachi again. It's chapter 3, 6 through 7. Then we have Hosea chapter 1, 1:6 all the way to 2:5. Then we have Haggai again. Wow, and this is all in a big list called the 12 minor prophets, and they're all just together. And you're going to see just all of these just come together on the 12 minor prophets. Hosea chapter 2. Gosh dang it! Wait, where am I at? Did we do Zechariah? Okay, so let's just say we just did Hosea chapter 1, 6. Chapter 1, verse 6 through chapter 2, verse 5. Then we have Haggai, chapter 2, 18 through 19, and then verses 20 through 21. Then we have Zechariah 1, chapter 1, all the way to chapter 3, verse 2, and then it's verse 2 through 10, and then it's chapter 4, 1 through 4, and chapter 5, verses 8 through 6, and then, it's Zechariah 5:8 through Zechariah 5:6-5. Then we have chapter 8 of Zechariah, and then bits of chapter 8 of Zechariah, and then bits of chapter 12 of Zechariah. Then we have Jonah again, and we have Micah, chapter 5, 1 through 2. We have Hosea again, chapter 2, 1 through 5, 14 through 19, 23 through 25, chapter 3, chapter 1 through 5. Then we have chapter 4, chapter 6 of Hosea, chapter 7 of Hosea, chapter 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 through, this is verse 13, verse 1 and then verse 1, and then 6 through 8, and then 11 through 13, and then chapter 14 of Hosea again, 9 through 10. And then we have Joel again. Joel chapter 1, 12 through 14, chapter 2, 2 through 13, chapter 4, 4 through 9, 11 through 14, 17, 19 through 20. Amos chapter 1 again. Amos is done now. We're done, because at the end of this, it's going to be all of Amos. That's all of Amos right there, because this is Amos 1 all the way to 8. And then there's bits of 8. Hang on. 8, chapter 1 through 5, 11 through 14, 9, 1, 56, 14 through 15. Obadiah. Just Obadiah verses 1 through 5, 8 through 12, 14 through 15. And then Jonah again, which we've already proven that is done. Okay, so I don't remember all of the ones that are done. I'm going to let the editor highlight these for you to show you that this is done, or this hasn't changed. These books haven't changed. I'm going to continue reading, and just good luck, okay? Because we're not even halfway there. I want to let everybody know that. We are not even halfway there. Oh gosh, it's been already an hour. Why? Oh gosh, why? God, it's terrible.